One of our more significant Edgewood traditions is gathering here each year in Memorial Park as we pay tribute to those who died serving their country. I want to thank you all for joining us today. To start us off, I want to call upon Reverend Jason Dower to lead us in our invocation.
Friends, I invite you to join me in a posture of prayer. God of our many understandings, you who created us, who sustain us, and who call us to live in peace, hear our prayer this day. Help us to shape and make a world where we will lay down the arms of war and turn our swords into plowshares, that we might harvest justice and peace. Comfort those who grieve the loss of their loved ones, and let your healing be the hope in our hearts. Hear our prayer this day, and in your mercy answer us, in the name of all that is holy. Amen. Amen.
I'd like to now call on the Boy Scouts of Troop 23 in Edgewood to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to introduce our honored guests. We have former Mayor of Edgewood, Ruth Pickering McGregor, and from the Grand Army of the Republic, Andrea Mao. I'll start with Ruth.
Today we can be thankful that we are able to be here and stand on this hallowed ground because of those who have gone before us and those who have served for us. Thank you to Wayne and to everyone who organized this memorial service. May God bless you, bless this memorial park, and bless our country that we may be at peace. We are grateful to those who gave their lives for our freedom, especially our own Scott Verner in Vietnam. Now, more than 100 years ago, the World War I memorial tablet was unveiled with the names of 208 Edgewood residents who had seen service. That was the beginning of our memorial park. Friends, this hallowed ground made so by our God and the men and women from Edgewood who have served our country throughout its many years, as well as in peacetime. In 1922, the Doughboy, the World War I soldier, was dedicated. The memorial timeline. In 1920, a little over 100 years ago, the World War I memorial tablet was unveiled. 1922, the Doughboy dedication ceremony. 1948, the dedication of the World War II memorial in the community park. 636 Edgewood men and women had been in service. In 1996, the Edgewood Historical Society led the way for renovation of the Doughboy statue and memorial plaques in Memorial Park. A plaque has been added noting the residents of Edgewood who served in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. In 1997, missing names were added to the Korean and Vietnam plaque, and we have continued to add missing names. In 2015, the campaign was started to find the names of those who served during the Korean and Vietnam periods and not included on the current plaque, and to raise funds for the purchase of new plaques. Can we get to this next page soon? 2 plaques were purchased in 2019 and dedicated. These added 86 additional names, bringing the total to 31 Korean and 126 Vietnam veterans. In 2020, the fundraiser was started for improvements to Memorial Park, including the brick sales and donations from past and present Edgewood residents. 2021, the gazebo was purchased and built as an Eagle Scout project. We are very thankful for that. 2022, engraved bricks started to be installed in Memorial Park, and bricks have continued to be added. The monument ordered for placement in the park was in 2023. And you will note that the Korean and Vietnam plaques are now behind me. We are most grateful to those who have served, and we will always remember those who have gone before us. Amen.
Andrea?
Right here. Good afternoon. Our community is blessed to have Wayne and his fellow veterans who have been dedicated for years to making sure that we commemorate Memorial Day with this ceremony and with the upkeep and additions to Memorial Park. I'm here today as a member of a local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. It's actually not the Grand Army of the Republic. Sorry, Wayne. I can trace my lineage back to at least 3 patriots from the American Revolution, and I work with the DAR to promote historic preservation, education, and patriotism. Today I want to say a few words about America 250. America 250 is our semi-quincentennial, yeah, that's a mouthful, centered around the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. It is the anniversary of the American colonies declaring their independence from Great Britain. While much of the focus will be on July 4th and the anniversary of the signing of the Declaration in Philadelphia, in fact, the revolution had already been going on for years before then and would go on for many more. If you know me, I could go on and on about this. If you want to talk more, I'll see you afterwards. I could also go on and on about the importance of Memorial Day. Originally called Decoration Day, it didn't begin until after the American Civil War. It was later elevated by World War I and the wearing of poppies. And in America's constant quest for another long weekend, it was finally situated as a national holiday on the last Monday in May in the early 1970s. So it really hasn't been around quite that long as it is today. You will often hear that this is not just about picnics in the Indianapolis 500, but about sacrifice, as we remember those honored dead who at Gettysburg President Lincoln described as giving the last full measure of devotion. We may remember family or friends who were lost in more recent wars, but for a moment today, I wanted us to remember those original patriots who fought for an idea. The unheard of idea that the average person could have a say in their government. Revolutionary. We as a country are still finding these often unknown soldiers and honoring them with a dignified burial. Just last week, the remains of 44 Revolutionary War soldiers found during construction in New York in 2019 were reinterred at Lake George Battlefield Park. At least some of these soldiers were from the 1st Pennsylvania Battalion and are linked to the 1775-1776 Quebec campaign. And most of them were in their late teens or early 20s. As this America 250 celebration year goes on, I am grateful to be here to recall why we get to celebrate. We get to celebrate this anniversary because of all of those who gave their lives fighting for freedom in all of the wars and military actions in these past 250 years. We get to celebrate because of those who selflessly pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Not only in creating a nation founded in liberty, but all who since then have bravely carried our American torch of honor and sacrifice. Thank you.
In past ceremonies, we talked at least one time about the guards at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, their requirements and their dedication. So I thought we'd talk a little bit today about where they actually hang out and do their thing, which is Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington National Cemetery is the largest cemetery in the United States cemetery system and is maintained by the United States Army. More than 430,000 individuals are buried in its 636 acres. Robert E. Lee originally owned the property, but when he resigned his commission in the U.S. Army and went to fight with the Confederacy, the U.S. Army seized his property, primarily because of the high ground it gave, which was a good protection for Washington, D.C. at the time. But as wartime fatalities mounted in military cemeteries in the D.C. area were filling, they needed a place to bury the fallen soldiers. Quartermaster General Montgomery Meigs ordered part of the property of Arlington to be used as a cemetery. And on May 13, 1864, the first military funeral was conducted for Private William Chrisman. Arlington officially became a national cemetery on June 15, 1864. Initially, being buried in a national cemetery wasn't considered an honor. It merely ensured the service members whose families couldn't afford to have them sent home for a proper burial that they would at least receive a proper burial. This began to change after the first official Decoration Day that was mentioned, and later renamed Memorial Day. The first Decoration Day ceremony at Arlington was in 1868. Popularity kind of catalyzed the National Cemetery and Arlington's transformation into what it's become today. Arlington National Cemetery is part of the Arlington National Cemetery Historic District, which also includes Arlington House, which was Lee's former manor house, Memorial Drive, the Women's Memorial, the Arlington Memorial Bridge, and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The tomb was dedicated on November 11th in 1921 with the burial of an unknown from World War I. Unknowns from World War II and the Korean War were added to crypts in front of the tomb in 1958. An unknown service member from the Vietnam War was buried in the third crypt in 1984. 14 years later, however, he was disinterred and identified by DNA. The empty crypt now honors all missing and unknown Americans who served in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War era. There are a lot of notable persons buried in Arlington. Two presidents, President William Howard Taft and John F. Kennedy, several astronauts, like John Glenn, Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, some other notable movie stars and recognizable figures such as Audie Murphy, Joe Louis, Glenn Miller, Maureen O'Hara, Lee Marvin, Abner Doubleday. They're buried in Arlington. It's also noted that those who are buried in Arlington, their family members, like their wives or husbands, can be buried there with them. That's why the total of 430,000 is so great. And when we hear about how many flags are put out on graves, it seems like they only got about half of them. But just before Memorial Day weekend, on May 21st, members of the 3rd Infantry Regiment, also known as the Old Guard, honors America's fallen heroes by placing American flags, one at each headstone and along every row in the columbarium and the niche walls. This year they placed approximately 250,000 flags. All flags are removed after Memorial Day when the park is opened again to the public. We're now going to honor America's Edgewood's fallen. I want to call on Michael Sooley.
It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Mike Sooley. Throughout our nation's history, there have been times when our freedom has been threatened. And when the call to arms came, Edgewood's sons and daughters rallied behind the flag and willingly did their part. Their names are on the monuments in this park. They served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. They served in the Army. They left behind what they were to become: warriors. They did what they felt was their duty, their obligation. They are our heroes. Most returned and continued with their lives, but some gave their lives for their country, for us. Let us remember them now. I call on my good friend and my hero and my former classmate who served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam from 1967 to 1971. Let me introduce Ned Shekel.
Thank you, Mr. Sully. In World War I, Edgewood sent some of its finest. Duncan Hughes Cameron, Henry Townsend Carpenter, Roy Charles Hoover, Edmund Cale, and in World War II, John Anderson Jr., Frank Bartley, Andrew Comey, Frank Daly, Thomas Ferretti, William Hone, James Hill, Richard Height, Albert Johnson, Hamilton Lamb, and Gilbert Long. And in Vietnam, Charles Ebert, Scott Werner, I forgot that in World War I missed that. Harold Archibald Knapp, Eugene Caney, under Clyde Stearns Sahel, Ray McWhinney, and in World War II, William Ludwig, William O'Donnell, Zane Rankin, Fortune Crack, Rosenhaus, James Harris Schultz, Joseph Tuping, Charles Vernisky, Charles Walder Jr., and Wayne Wingroth. Now placing the wreath, please bring the wreath.
In recognition of our fallen, present arms. Order, arms. I'll finish today by sharing a tribute to the fallen taken from the History and Rhymes of the Lost Battalion, written and published by L.C. McCullum in 1919. From Sabiel to the Vale, with the night wind mournful wail, goes a sound that's understood, gather here in Argonne Wood. Through the night winds wet and dreary, word goes on to Chateau Thierry. Ghostly phantoms hear the call, gather those who gave their all. Phantom heroes gather there, in shell-torn land so bleak and bare. There beneath the sighing tree, they are judging you and me. Thank you. I'll call on Reverend Dower to give us our benediction, and afterwards we'll go to the basement in the church for lunch.
Again, please join me in a posture of prayer. God of every nation, as we remember those that gave their life for our sake, let us be stirred to action in their memory. We confess that we have not done all that is possible to promote peace and justice in our world. We have not loved our neighbors, let alone our enemies. Forgive us for failing to live up to your commandments. Empower us to work for your kingdom in this world, and welcome us by your grace into your kingdom in the next. We thank you for the food and fellowship we are about to enjoy. Use it to nourish our bodies to do your will in this world. Amen.
Amen.
And that concludes our ceremony. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.